Hello, I'm Brian Lucareli, Director of our Private Client Services Group and co-chair of our Family Offices team at Foley and Lardner. And today I'm here with Jen Urban, a partner and chair of our Innovative Technology Sector. Welcome, Jen.
Hello, Brian.
And today we're going to discuss cybersecurity attacks. But before we do, Jen, would you mind just sharing a little bit of your professional background with our audience, and then we'll jump right into it?
Sure, happy to do so. I've been practicing for around 24 years in the area of privacy, and in the last 15, even more so in cybersecurity, because obviously the increase of cybersecurity attacks and the reliance upon data. I am the vice chair of the tech transactions and cyber and privacy practice at the firm, and I'm also co-chair of the privacy and cybersecurity subsector within our innovative tech sector. I'm also the founder of the Midwest Cybersecurity Alliance.
I don't think there are enough hours in the day for all you're doing, but you know what? We've got the right person today, so let's jump right into it. So, what types of cybersecurity attacks should family offices be concerned about?
Sure, a very good question. I mean, all of them is the right answer. Maybe 10 years ago, I would just warn clients about the potential possibility of a cybersecurity attack. I mean, now it's just a known risk. I mean, we say it's not if, but when, but how long someone has already been in your systems. On average, threat actors are in your system for about 204 days before you even
Wow.
know that they are there. So, I mean, a lot of the common attacks are things that, family offices are probably well aware of, things like phishing attacks, which are emails, et cetera, that are fake, that are trying to get you to click on things. There could be social engineering types of attacks where you're actually getting phone calls to the family office of people pretending that they are someone that they are not. There are ransomware attacks, which cause a lot of continuity issues. And typically now with ransomware attacks, it's not just about shutting down your systems. It's also about exfiltrating data, and that typically occurs before a ransomware attack comes in to shut down your systems. There's also something the family offices should be very concerned about are wire transfer issues, and they can happen in so many different ways. Either somebody could be in your system, diverting funds, or, they could be dealing with, beneficiary family members, et cetera, changing wire transfer instructions. So trustees and others need to be very concerned about that.
So, a little bit of a scary start to our conversation. So, what can family offices do to help prevent these type of cybersecurity attacks?
Well, I think this really runs the gamut. And, I think that my best advice is that family offices can become cybersecurity experts, because dealing with cybersecurity is really a multidisciplinary approach. I think a lot of family offices and clients in general just think it should be left to the IT team. And while the IT team, whether that's internal or external, is obviously the core source of help and services, really understanding and preparing for a cybersecurity attack really runs the gamut of everybody in the family office. And I'll explain why. One, I think what I see in most family offices is they hire something called an MSSP, which is a managed security service provider. That's typically an outside third party that is really securing your office. And I think one of the issues with that is why I highly recommend that if you don't have an internal IT team. And for some family offices that are smaller, it may not be logistically feasible to have a full-blown IT team. So it makes sense to outsource some of that. But understanding what the outside third-party IT service provider is doing for you versus what you need to be doing. We often see breaches because there's a gap. And meaning the outside third party was never supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z for you, but it was a misunderstanding when that contract was put into place. So that's one big area, I think, of risk. I mean, highly recommend getting those third parties in, but understanding what they do versus what you need to be doing. Another thing that all family offices can do is develop IT policies and procedures and align to best practice cybersecurity frameworks such as NIST, CSF. There's lots of them and they're available for free and are online, because at least it gives you an idea of what are the best practices out there and how
Right.
do we align to those. And whether you do that internally yourself or whether you have your outside IT firm help you with that is extremely critical. And then it's really doing a risk assessment. Really, you're assessing yourself, or you're having an outside third party assess to these frameworks to see where those gaps are and understanding what are the gaps that we need to fill. Every organization has many cybersecurity gaps, but it's understanding what are the risks that are most prevalent to your particular family office and trying to close those gaps. And that's an ongoing process. That's not necessarily one time a year. If your office changes, you're going to new technology, all sorts of things. You're working with other vendors, other family members. It's constantly assessing that new type of risk because it just takes one vulnerability, unfortunately, before somebody's in the door. Also evaluating cyber insurance. The cyber insurance market has been extremely volatile over the last couple of years, and really understanding what cybersecurity options are out there. Are they financially feasible? Should it be the right policy? And then if it is, can you make sure that all of your outside external parties are able to bill under that insurance policy? For example, you can have an outside IT firm that's not approved on the panel. You could have your law firm that's not approved on the panel. You might think about if we had a large scale incident, will we need a PR firm? They should be approved on the panel. If we have ransomware incident, do we need to engage in a ransom negotiator? That's typically what we do. Who would we call? Do we need disaster recovery services, meaning boots on the ground to get us back up and operational? So it's a really combination of looking at whether cyber insurance makes sense for you, whether
Right.
it's cost prohibitive or not, but also what does that cyber insurance plan say? So that's some of the groundwork. Another, and I would say the most important thing to do is to have an incident response plan. That means who would be running a cybersecurity incident internally and externally if you had a very serious incident. Who's running point on that? Typically, you don't have your outside IT firm that's helping you secure your environment do the forensics in an incident because they were hired to protect your environment. So typically, they may start out to help you recover, but usually we hire a third-party forensic firm to come in and do the investigation because there's no conflict of interest there. So it's really getting your incident response plan together, making sure you understand who all the third parties are, and then practicing it, and practicing it. And the way you practice it is something called a tabletop exercise. This is really a military term because you really are the first responders in a cybersecurity incident. I don't mean to scare you, but the FBI is happy to help in the sense of they may share information about a particular threat actor, but they don't come out on site and save you. You have to hire your own team. So really practicing your incident response plan and doing tabletop exercises is probably one of the best things you can do so that you're not just dealing with an emergency for the first time and figuring out how all these parties come together, looking at your insurance, figuring out who's running point. So a little planning goes a very long way. All the statistics have shown that's one of the best ways to cut down the cost of a data incident. Some other things to think about in particular with family offices are financial controls. And I'm sure many, family offices, this is a huge core focus. But, if you're doing a financial transfer of money or a wire transfer, all checking those all, not just through email. It's always a verbal authentication process, whether that's with family members, outside vendors, partners, that no wire transfer is ever just adhered to via an email because many emails are fake, particularly around wire transfers. Even if, say, one of your partners got a data breach, they could email you legitimately from a legitimate email, but it could be fake. So there's always should be a secondary process that's put in place around financial controls there. Just looking through vendor responsibilities and your agreements and making sure that you're passing through security requirements. I think a lot of times, many of our clients, it's not their own environment that's breached. I mean, I would say the majority of the time it's from a vendor. So while you may have a secure environment, if you're going to be passing on confidential or personally identifiable information to your third-party vendors, it's making sure that you are using vendors that have insurance, that will notify you of incidents, that may take some indemnification, but really doing a more drilled down deep dive on what data is going to what vendor and what contract terms you have in place. And then the last one that is, very important. We always say people, processes, and technology are the key to cybersecurity, but the people are so important. Training of your employees should be an ongoing effort, and training from doing actual live training, about, tips on cybersecurity and privacy rules, but also automated training, fake phishing test, automated test, looking at things if you use MFA, which really has become one of the standards, that's out there, even doing phishing tests on MFA if people are clicking MFA inappropriately, things like that. So I highly emphasize, the training aspect.
Wow. A lot of things to digest there, but very helpful tips. Thank you. And then lastly, I'm going to swing it around and pull the law into this a little bit. And that's what types of data breach laws and notifications are implicated if personally identifiable data is involved in some sort of cybersecurity incident?
Sure, there's a lot of them, but the ones I'm going to focus on that are most relevant is obviously you have a lot of personally identifiable information about the families, obviously in the family offices, and could be about trustees as well. So let's just start with U.S. law. So in the U.S., it's really boils down to each state's law and how they define when a breach has occurred. So it's not just the state in which the family office is in. It's the state of residence for the individuals whose information, has been impacted. So even if you have a family office of 20 people, if they live all over in different states, you're dealing with multiple state laws. And typically US state laws really protect information that's first and last name in combination with typical things like social security numbers,
Right.
driver's license numbers, passports, could be accounts, usually accounts with codes, could be health information, but you could have state data breach notification requirements, which you'd have to send notifications to individuals. Typically, you offer identity theft and credit monitoring when Social Security and driver's license, things like that are involved to help prevent identity theft. You could have to notify state AGs. In some states, if you have one person affected, you might have to reach out and file a state attorney general's report. You could have to notify credit monitoring, agencies as well. Probably likely not. And then for those family offices that have, individuals that are around the globe, there's also laws all over the world that also have requirements as well. I mean, in particular, one we think about in Europe is the GDPR. So it's evaluating where your families live and, where they're residents of, because it could get more global. Also, if a family office has a self-insured health plan, that could be governed under HIPAA, which is a separate framework as well, that may come into play. But it's sticky. It's not just the risk of identity theft, to family members and trustees, et cetera. It's also the regulatory notification obligations that come into play as well.
Well, Jen, I'm going to take a deep breath and say thank you, number one, for sharing all of your insights and your professional insights today. And I want to thank all of you for watching our presentation. For more information, as always, please visit Foley.com under Family Offices. Thank you.